Your Dog's Friend is a nonprofit 501c3 whose mission is to help keep dogs out of shelters by educating and supporting their humans. We promote positive method of training and behavior modification through stress-free methods. As part of that mission, we offer free webinars like the one you're about to watch. Subjects range from dog behavior, stress-free training, and other tools to help you understand your relationship with your dog. If you liked the webinar, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Click the notification bell and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll be notified when future videos are posted. Now enjoy the webinar.
So welcome to today's webinar. It is Passing Dogs on Leash, sponsored by Your Dog's Friend, a nonprofit 501c3 whose mission is to help keep dogs out of shelters by educating and supporting their humans. Since 2006, we've been promoting the use of positive reinforcement training methods by hosting free webinars, just like this one, posting valuable resources on our website, offering affordable training classes both in person and online, and providing free advice and referrals. We are passionate about our mission, so we hope you will enjoy this webinar and spread the word about Your Dog's Friend. My name is Carrie Hoare. I'm a volunteer with Your Dog's Friend, and I will be hosting this afternoon's webinar. Our speaker today is Joyce Loebig. Joyce is the owner of Rewards Dog Training, serving the Washington, D.C. and surrounding areas. She has over 10 years of experience providing dog training and behavior modification solutions for dogs and their families. Joyce graduated from the Karen Pryor Academy and is also a certified professional dog trainer, knowledge assessed, a certified separation anxiety pro, and a fear-free professional. We are lucky to have Joyce teaching various classes at Your Dog's Friend, including basic skills and Passing Dogs on Leash, skills for success. So without further ado, let's get started on today's webinar. I'm sure everybody's interested. This is going to be a great topic.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for the introduction. As we said, what we're talking about today is Passing Dogs on Leash, your skills for success. So why this topic? Why discuss how to pass dogs on leash? The ideas kind of came to me because I kept getting recurring questions from class students who had already often taken a leash manners class or maybe a basic skills class, and they were struggling to get their dog-friendly dogs past other dogs when they're on leash. It was like the one thing they kept saying, everything's okay, except I really can't pass other dogs. So the dog's too excited, I can't move them on, they just bark and whine and want to pull, and it's really a struggle. So that kept recurring as a question. As a trainer, I also know that that kind of excitement can sometimes turn into frustration. And when dogs are repeatedly being frustrated in a situation, sometimes that excitement can turn into a more negative feeling. We think of excitement as having still positive feelings from the dog's point of view. Frustration is started tipping into negative. So we want to really keep dogs in a positive framework when they're out and about in the world. And the other reason is that why teach a dog to pass a dog versus greet a dog is that on-leash greetings can sometimes end badly. And if you have enough of them, you can have a dog with some negative associations with other dogs. So there's a couple reasons for why this topic. I mentioned already, I want to keep dogs feeling positive. I want an easier walk for people. Also, that's the other thing, the people are struggling. The dogs might be struggling, but so are the people. And I want a safe walk for all dogs. So not just physically safer, no leash tangling, you don't drop a leash accidentally when the dogs start to try to play, but also what I'm going to call emotionally safer for your dog, meaning not all your other dogs out there are friendly for other dogs, or they don't want anything to do with a dog. So I want those dogs to stay safe as well. So let's teach you and your dog how to get on past, because we can't say hi to every dog out there. All right. The other reason for this topic is I have some inspiration from my own dogs and experience with them. These are the two dogs I've had since I've been a trainer, actually. My first one, Shiva there, the black and white, she was a dog who ended up as leash reactive. I mean, she had pretty negative feelings about dogs on leash. And she kind of started me on my training journey. And then we lost her in 2021. So the next dog we have, our current dog, is Rio. He's a really sweet guy, super friendly to people, super friendly to dogs, and I'm determined that he's not gonna get leash reactive. He is gonna stay positive to dogs on leash, and I was determined that he is gonna pass dogs as appropriate. So those are my two inspirations. So, okay. Let me just give you a quick rundown of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the type of dogs this webinar is geared toward, some reasons why passing becomes difficult for your dogs, the kind of equipment that will help you as you're working on some of these techniques. It's not much, don't worry. And then we're going to get into the techniques themselves. They kind of go into a couple different categories. The categories overlap. I have another slide later about this, looking at how to prevent behaviors, getting distance from dogs, positioning your dogs in different orientations to each other for the best chance of success, rewarding your dog for when they're doing what you want, which will be looking at a dog, walking by a dog, and a couple, another key super useful game, which is the 1, 2, 3 game. And you may have heard of that. We'll talk about that later. So that's kind of our overview of what we're going to focus on today. Okay, let me first talk about the kind of dogs these topics are mostly geared toward. These are really mostly geared toward dogs who are still considered dog friendly. So, which is a little different than a definition that most people would think of as reactive. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the distinction. It's not always this cut and dry, but just so you're aware. Dog-friendly dogs are those who I would say are still seeming positive about seeing dogs, still considered friendly and predictable when they get to dogs. The difference could be a whole topic itself, but in general terms, friendly dogs, looser body language. If they vocalize, they sound excited or higher pitched. When they get with other dogs, it's still predictably friendly. We don't tip into sort of aggressive, assertive, or defensive behavior even. A reactive dog might be one who's a little more unsure, tenser body language. Any vocalizations might be deeper or sound more serious. You might see stress signals, arousal escalates, and maybe behavior is unpredictable. Maybe friendly, maybe not, or always unfriendly. Again, not always cut and dry. What these techniques are really geared toward are dogs who are still dog friendly. With that said, these techniques can help dogs who are maybe tipping into reactivity, but there's more to it if your dog is having real negative feelings about passing dogs on leash. These will still help, but you will probably need more distance. You will have to work to change their negative emotional response to a more positive one. That's out of scope for today. You might have to consider more safety issues if your dog is showing more aggressive behaviors. That's out of scope for today too. So again, the techniques can help, but generally we're talking about dogs who are still dog friendly. So, all right. Okay. And just let me talk a little bit more about, again, sort of the why of this. Why should we teach your dog to pass a dog? Why not just let your dog greet every dog? With a couple reasons. Greeting dogs when they're on leash sometimes becomes pretty problematic. A dog who is on leash can't show their natural body language because the leash, by definition, is restricting their movement a little bit. They tend to pull forward, and that forward pull, that forward lean toward can be a really assertive signal to another dog, which is something other dogs might be take a little exception to because they're not sure. Dogs usually want to move and play once they go to sniff each other, and the leashes constrain them, and that can lead to tension because the dogs keep pulling forward more, trying to get to. People pull back more because they're trying to keep things from getting out of hand. We want to, all those reasons for the dog-dog interactions, we want to say limit or not greet every dog on leash. Another reason is most people don't know how to set up a successful on-leash greeting. I don't have that part of our topic today, but I will answer a question about it later because I get the question every time I teach this class. But what about greeting? And I'll talk about that a little bit later, maybe in the Q&A. And the other reason to not let dogs greet and to teach how to pass is because if you don't, it sets the expectation that your dog, when they see a dog, they get to greet every single time. Not all dogs want to greet. Not all people want you to greet their dog. And again, it can lead to this out of sort of over the top excited behavior. So we really want to, limit that. ability sometimes, or maybe all the time, then kind of depends. All right, so, and then this might be obvious to all of you out there, I'm not sure, but I was debating, you know, do I keep this slide, not, but let me just talk about why they struggle to pass. Again, might be obvious. They're social, they're curious about each other. The other reason is that they might have a history that every time they've seen dogs, it has led to super excitement, sometimes play groups, daycare, dog friends. The behavior of pulling toward, stopping, barking, whining, staring, maybe is working. Maybe every time it happens, they actually get to greet the dog. So then they're going to keep trying it because that's maybe what they really, really want. Sometimes we've seen dogs who don't have a lot of experience with dogs. They're friendly, but they don't really haven't had the their sort of, you know, social interactions and learned appropriate approaches or not. And they get overexcited and hyper-focused on dogs. And the other reason is just sometimes there's a reason we can't figure out. So there's always that other category. So this is one of the reasons you may be struggling with this. Okay, so let's tip into here the kind of things you might need when you're working on some of these techniques. Not a big list at all, but I am going to talk about using food. So one of the things that's really helpful is have a little bag to hold your treats, so it's easy to access your treats and food as you reward your dog. You can stick treats in your pocket. A lot of times, though, that's hard to extract. Plastic baggies and pockets end up spilling a lot of the times. I really love a treat bag. The treat bag can be a treat bag you buy, you know, designed for holding treats. It can be just like a nail apron, a fanny pack, something like that. And for most of these, all you need, for all of them, you just need a regular leash. 6-foot regular leash is usually the best length, the average length that works for most people and dogs. Not flexi leashes. Flexi leashes are hard to control. You can't hold on to them yourself with your other hand, because usually that's pretty rough on your hand. They can cause injury. They're hard to reel in. They let a lot of space out, and not recommended for almost any reason, in my opinion. But I also like dogs to be on harnesses. So then as they do pull, or you have to sort of get in another direction, you're not pulling on their neck and their collar. That's not great for their throat. And so I like harnesses. Couple recommendations: T-Touch Harmony harness. Your Dog's Friend sells those. The Blue 9 Balance harness is similar to that. For some dogs, the Freedom, I think it's also called the 2 Hounds Design front clip no pull harness is appropriate. But there are other harnesses that are good out there. These are some of my top recommendations. And then one of the things you're going to see used throughout our presentation here today is food, treats. And I am talking about high value treats, okay? Your dog is probably pretty motivated to see other dogs, look at, stare, pull toward, whatever. So we need a way to motivate them to do something else for you. And high value treats are going to be key. So when I'm talking high value, I'm not talking about your biscuits. I'm not talking about the Charlie Bears or kibble. Once dogs get into a super difficult situation, such as when they're trying to pass another dog, they're usually going to have to be motivated by something a little higher value. So some ideas would be bits of actual food that dogs like: cheese, chicken, or bits of other meat that they can have or they like. Or store-bought treats. There's some store-bought treats that work very well. They should be soft, usually smelly. And here's some recommendations for you here that I put up on the screen. It varies a bit by dog. My go-to these days is the Cloud Star Tricky Trainer Soft and Chewy brand treats. I do not get any kickback for recommending that. It's just, it's been working. Stella and Chewy have some really great treats out there. ZB Peak is another brand that has some great treats out there. Zook's mini training treats are pretty effective for some dogs. I find the Tricky Trainers and the other ones listed are a little higher. And there are probably other suggestions. A lot of trainers have their favorite go-tos, but these are mine. So if you're heading out for the walk and you want to motivate your dog, bring something better than the biscuits, because it's probably not going to work. Okay. All right. And I promise you that in our presentation today, I do have some videos to show you and things like that, a bit of talking up front, so just bear with me. as we get into this. Okay, so our discussion today is sort of broken into some kind of categories. And as I started to do this, I realized the techniques really move into different categories and different concepts. You don't have to memorize this. When they send out the link for the recording of the webinar, I'm going to have a handout that can send out, that they can send out for you. And I'm going to put this in a handout for you. But we're kind of, in broad senses, I group it into kind of these concepts. Prevention, preventing what we don't want while we're teaching something else. Getting distance, the further away, the better it usually works for your dog. Positioning your dog and orientation to, and how they're oriented to each other can have a big impact on your dog's ability to pass, not pass, or pay attention to you. Rewarding them for when they do look at a dog, because they are going to look at another dog. Some ways to create some predictability out there and also some focus at the same time. And then, of course, the other key piece, which is actually what we're not going to talk about today, but I did want to throw it in here, is that teaching your dog certain behaviors and cues is part of the equation, of course. Attention focus cue, such as look at their name, hand targeting, touch targeting, you may have heard it as, leash walking skills generally, teaching your dog to walk along with you, pay attention to you on the leash walk, etc. Of course, those behaviors and skills are part of the equation of passing a dog successfully. But lots of places to learn those skills. It's just too much information for today, but I did want to include it. It's kind of assumed that maybe you've already worked on it, or maybe you are working on it. Maybe your class starts in a couple weeks. Maybe it's been a while since training. These other techniques can really help you get back sort of in gear for that and can help you while you're reteaching this. So those are sort of our broad categories, but they all overlap. They're not distinct. As you'll see, we're going to talk about food lures and find it, repositioning, and that kind of falls into different categories. So, okay. So first things, and this is sort of a philosophy of training generally when you're trying to replace maybe a dog who's got behavior you don't want, pulling toward a dog, yelping when they see a dog, not paying attention to you when another dog is in sight or when you're trying to pass. What we want to do it first is we want to just limit their opportunities to practice that. We want to teach a different behavior. We want to reward a different behavior. We want to set up for a new behavior, turning away, walking with you, looking without yelping, pulling. But in the meantime, we want to prevent that from happening. And we can use a couple different methods for that. Getting distance is one, teaching other skills is another, but another one is to use just a distraction. So how do we limit the times that they get to pull toward, bark at another dog? We can distract them as needed while we're teaching other behaviors. And one of the easiest distractions to use is food. Food is generally motivating for most dogs. I realize there are dogs for whom the food is not going to be as motivating, or in that environment they will not take food. But for most of the time, a good food treat is going to be a really good distraction for you and your dog. So one of the first skills I teach when we're talking about how to use food to move your dog, reposition or distract your dog, is using a food lure. A food lure really means taking a piece of food, putting it in your hand, at your dog's nose, and guiding your dog along, okay? I would have food in my hand, put it in my dog's nose, and guide them along, okay? Again, not a substitute for training, but can help you while you're working on training and getting other behaviors established, okay? So here is an example of how to do this. And I do encourage people to actually practice this. It may seem obvious. I just have food in my hand, I stick it at my dog's nose and I pull them, lead them along. It is obvious in an easy scenario, but when it's harder to do is when you're in a harder scenario. So I do suggest people practice this without anything wrong, without anything around, in a really easy environment. And then you really want to practice it when it's a little bit harder, setting up a distraction yourself. So in this video, I have an example of, this is me and my dog, and I'm luring him away from a little distraction I set up in the yard. This is a real distraction for him. It's a little stuffed animal. In fact, it's this dog, he's pretty interested in usually. I've had to keep him away from him in the house. And I'm just practicing luring him away. So take a look.
All right. Go. Yep. Good boy. Hup, hup, hup. Hup. Yep.
Okay, so again, I'm practicing my timing, getting treats out of my bag, getting them to my dog's nose, practicing how far I need to be from my dog when I'm doing that. And I'm also practicing for him around something that's slightly distracting. This stuffed animal is not usually sitting in our yard. So how can I practice getting him away from it? Okay. I use very little other cues. I did use a high-pitched sound to get his attention at some point. But mostly I was just getting my hand out to him and leading him along. Okay. Practicing where it's easy. I control the outcome. No big risk if he gets to the stuffed animal. I've got him on a leash. He's not going to get it. If he did, it's a stuffed animal. But want to practice these skills when it's easy and then practice when it's harder. So in this next video, come on, there we go. Here I am, same dog, actually luring him past a dog friend of his. So again, he's dog friendly, but we can't always say hi to our dog friends. So what you can't see in this video is that there is a dog off to the right of the screen. One of his friends is in the yard with their person, and I'm using a food lure to get him to go past. I don't want him to pull. I don't want him to get in the habit of taking me over there. He's strong, and I want to lure him past. She's pretty close. There's no fence, so she's pretty tempting. So a good scenario for a food lure. And you see here, he looks back. I'd like to go say hi. And I just keep him going. Okay, so looks pretty simple. It is generally. I'm setting up from a distance that I need to be from my dog, from the other dog, meaning, and I'm just keeping him from practicing what I don't want, pulling toward, barking at, staring down, getting all excited and crazy. High value food at his nose, luring him along. All right. Okay, so there's another skill that's pretty useful, I find, with using food. Instead of taking food and putting in your dog's nose, is to teach him to chase a treat that you toss along the ground. This is sometimes fun for a lot of dogs. Chasing a treat for even just a foot or two is more fun than sometimes taking it just to their mouth. It can work as a distraction again, we're preventing. It can actually move your dog further away from a dog, because distance is something we're going to talk about in a bit. And that's pretty key to what we're talking about and trying to get these things to happen. You can use it to change your dog's position, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. It can also just act as a reward. So if you're teaching cue, like a focus cue or a leash walking cue, you can use this as a more fun reward than just taking a treat. So I'm going to show you a video of this. Might seem pretty obvious, but yeah, show a video anyway. This dog was just learning Find It, and then some other dogs happened to show up during this little session, so it kind of worked out. Come on.
Good boy.
Beautiful. And as we come a little further, I want you to ask him to make a U-turn, and his reward for the U-turn will be the chase the treat.
Good boy, Waffles. Good boy. Good boy.
Anytime you're ready. Good job. Now, let's walk a little bit further toward the dog park.
Sure. Oh, we got two big dogs up there.
Oh, okay. Well, make a U-turn way before the dog.
Yeah, they're all the way up.
In fact, you could try it now. And chase a treat. Very nice. That's exactly right.
Good boy.
So now he's like looking at you.
Okay, so It helps distract, helps as a reward for a behavior. She was teaching him U-turns as well. We're going to talk about that in a bit. She was also trying to get further from oncoming dogs. Tossing the treat kept him going the direction that she wanted. Again, can be a reward for behavior you asked, can be a redirect, just distract, can be a way to move your dog. Lots of dogs love this game. I use it for my dog all the time for not chasing squirrels. That's his big thing right now. We're working and been working a long time on it. And a lot of dogs have a lot of fun with it. So it's just another tool you can teach your dog and use when you're out there. All right.
Good boy.
There we go. Okay. One of the key pieces of doing any of these techniques, whether you're doing a distraction or teaching some behaviors or doing some of the things we're talking about in a little bit, is getting distance from dogs. So when you have a dog who's got a problem with something in the environment, whether it's a dog or a skateboard or a squirrel or a cat or whatever it is, getting further away almost always helps your chances of building the behavior you want versus the behavior you don't want. So in this situation, we want our dogs to keep walking, look back at us maybe, or just look without pulling, without barking, all that, or keep walking past. Getting more distance is going to be a key piece of that. How far is kind of up, depends on the dog. So you start all of these as far away as you need to for your dog, okay? So how do you know if you're far enough away? A couple key things to think about. There's probably more, but will your dog take food at that distance? Good food, high value treats. Can they respond to any behavior they know? And can they look at the dog without pulling, barking, whining, stopping? Now, it's not that if you don't tick one of these boxes or you can only tick all of these boxes, you know, it's not cut and dry like that, but there's just some markers you can kind of consider if you're far enough away. And it's going to depend per dog. So, and if they can't do any of that, even at a great distance, we've got those other techniques we talked about, and find it, distraction, all that. So this really does vary per dog, okay? It could vary by the day. It could vary by the time of day. It could vary by the week, the type of dog that they're looking at, friend, dog they don't know, dog they do know, that kind of thing. So getting distance is going to be a key piece of this, all right? So how do we get distance? We have a couple of different ways. Food lure, we talked about that, just luring them further away. We can do find it, tossing them in a direction we want them to go to orient them down away from the other dog. We, of course, can teach other cues and behaviors. And we can also teach them, to walk in a different direction to get distance. And that's what we're going to talk about in a minute, okay? So just, again, they're intertwined. It's not like just distance is one and positioning is another, but they are very much intertwined. So here's just a video of getting distance again. We'll talk about different moves you can make to get distance, but this is a scenario with my dog. We were passing a yard, and in the yard is one of his friends, but also some other dogs that do not like other dogs. And I didn't want my dog to pull toward his friend because I know the other dog in that yard was not super friendly toward him. And so I simply, and if I had kept going down the sidewalk, I didn't think I was going to get my dog to keep passing. So I crossed the street and I was able to get the behavior I wanted, which was keep walking, focus on me, take treats. You'll hear the dogs in a minute. There they are.
Good boy. Rio, this way. Good boy. This way. Yeah. Good job. Good job.
I'm gonna just stop it there. Not much else happens really. If I'd stayed on the sidewalk, the yard was pretty close to the sidewalk. There's a wall there. He tries to jump on the wall. He was probably going to pull toward the dogs in the yard. I didn't want that. I knew I needed to be further away. Across the street, I got the behavior I wanted. So you see in that video too, of course, he's got leash walking skills. He does know a couple of behaviors. But I could have just as easy put a treat at his nose and lured him across the street for the moment. I gave him treats a lot along the way. I take high value stuff on the walk. I was probably giving him cheese in that scenario, one of his favorite things. So I just needed more space. It was simple as that. And then I could pass. Okay, oh, there we go. All right. So distance and positioning kind of go hand in hand, and I'm going to talk about ways to get this distance by walking in different sort of directions with your dog, so to speak. But I put this slide in about positioning, a couple of slides on positioning your dog in relation to each other here because they're so intertwined. So, and I hope that will make sense in just a minute. A dog's reaction to another dog can really be affected by how they are facing each other or how they're not facing each other. Okay, you can really get improved behavior we want, usually if they are not facing another dog. This is for dogs, again, who are really interested in other dogs, really super friendly, really super focused on those. If they're not facing directly, they often have a much better chance of keep walking, focus on you, doing other behaviors. By changing the way your dog is facing, you can also increase your distance from the other dog, and you have a better chance of success. Success here meaning keep walking, right? Don't make a big fuss about the dog. So this is just the photo from class in this little photo, and I'm going to show you some more photos in a minute. We've got one dog facing one direction, and the other dog's rear end is toward that dog with the distance they needed, okay? So what's harder, what's easier for dogs? These are generalities, just as a sort of general rule. There are exceptions. Also in this photo, in this graphic, just so you know, the distance here is not the distance you might actually need, but it's just for illustration here. Typically, it's easier for dogs if they are behind another dog to kind of still pay attention, again, at the distance you want. Sometimes dogs, it's easier if the dog is in front of the other dog, but sometimes as I said, there's always exceptions. Sometimes they want to turn around and look. But generally, if you can kind of one dog following another, that's an easier situation. What's maybe easier, but maybe tipping into moderate, is parallel dogs facing at the same direction, at the same like space, next to each other. Another variation is sometimes a little harder is if dogs are perpendicular. So one dog's facing this way, and one dog's facing that way. Okay. And what's usually the hardest situation is if dogs face each other. If one is looking directly into the eyes, face, nose, head of the other. That is usually the hardest scenario. It is, though, the way we often encounter other dogs on our walks, because on sidewalks or paths or whatever, we're usually coming at, and that's where we have a problem. So there's little ways you can still keep going on your trajectory for the most part, but reorient your dog. It changes the position and can get distance at the same time. So just some pictures from class again. We've got two dogs in the top picture. They're kind of behind each other. The two dogs in the picture underneath, they're passing parallel. Dogs are facing the same way. One dog's passing. Next, perpendicular here in the top photo, the white dog and the dog that's sitting are at a perpendicular sort of angle toward each other. And you can see in the bottom picture, facing dogs is the hardest scenario. This was a little oops moment from class. It does happen, but those dogs got eyes on each other and then they just started to pull toward each other because that's often the scenario that's the hardest for them. So maybe we were too close, didn't have enough distance there. The dogs just, had their moment. It does happen. Okay, so what are the ways we can change our dog's direction? Let's say we are on a path or a sidewalk or even across the street sometimes, but walking straight at each other, the dogs facing each other is going to be too hard to pass. You can change your dog's orientation in 3 kind of main ways. There's more, but 3 main ways. Walk in an arc, walk in a U-turn, so you can go a completely other direction and get your dogs facing the same way, or make a 90-degree turn with your dog facing you and away from the other dog. These also increase distance, like I said before. Okay, just some illustrations of this. Maybe it's obvious, I don't know, but arc or C curve, you might say, if you're coming on straight to a dog, taking a little curve to the other direction with your dog, changes your dog's eye head position, adds a little more distance from the oncoming dog. 90-degree turn keeps your dog focused on you because you could be standing right in front of your dog. Maybe you have to pull to the side and stop or go into a sit for a moment or two. Keeps your dog's back to the other dog and gets a little more distance at the same time as well. And then sometimes maybe there's no space at all to do either of those. And maybe you just need to make a complete turn of direction where you maybe can go look for other space, or maybe you know it's the dog that they don't get along with, or maybe it's the dog that they really have the most trouble passing because they're so excited to see them. Sometimes you just have to make a complete U-turn and go another way. And that changes your dog's orientation and it also gets distance. Okay, some video on this. In this video, I'm walking along. There's a dog that starts coming up the sidewalk. I take a little C curve to the right and I get to keep walking with my dog.
Yeah, I floated that by my mom and she was like, oh, I was hoping you'd do that.
I feed a lot here.
Good enough.
All right. If I had kept going down that sidewalk straight with that dog coming on, I would not have had the space I needed. You can see his reaction at the end. He turned back to like investigate that dog and I had to redirect him back to me. If I had stayed in the sidewalk, he would have pulled toward, it would have probably been a leash tangle. I wanted to avoid all of that. I simply just moved in an arc to the side. That's the distance I needed. I just had the green space right there. So that worked out well. Oh, there we go. Here's another video of making a U-turn. This is a scenario where I had the narrow bridge in a park, 2 dogs coming toward me. I knew that it was pretty narrow. My dog is big, he's friendly, he is kind of comes on strong, and I knew I didn't have the space I needed to keep him going. So I made a complete U-turn, got over to some space on the side, treated him a lot for just waiting patiently until the dogs passed. So in this scenario too, again, he's got leash skills, he knows some behaviors, that kind of thing. I could just as easily have had a food lure or using Find It to move him along. I'll just take a look.
I'm gonna turn
This way. Come on. Let's go. Come on. Hurry.
keep recording. Hey, Teresa.
Is that the same dog?
Same dog, yeah.
Good dog.
Yeah.
Come on.
Can you get the dogs in too? Good boy.
So if you notice in that video, and I knew that woman, so we had a quick hello there. I fed him a lot. I treated him often for being over there with me, for waiting. It wasn't his choice. He would have probably liked to just keep going, go sniff those dogs. But I wanted to reward him for the good behavior I was getting. So I asked him for a couple behaviors. I rewarded him often. Again, I had high value food in that treat bag, and we got what we needed. So we made the U-turn, we moved off to the side, and I got success. That's what I wanted. So in that scenario, we did not pass directly, but he just wasn't ready. I think soon, probably this was some months ago now, but I think soon he'd probably be ready to. But again, I might always make a different choice if two dogs are coming at me, and I'm not sure. You know, no big deal, make a quick U-turn. Didn't take that much time, and I got what I wanted. So now, I don't have a video of the 90-degree turn. I looked and looked and I couldn't find one actually. But it's very similar. Like in this scenario here, I very well could have made that U-turn, come over here, and just put him in a 90-degree position to the other dogs. He could have been in a sit facing me, or I could have had his back toward the other dogs. And in, you know, early when we got him, maybe and with some dogs that might have been necessary, he stood nicely there for me and took treats and did behavior. So I didn't do that, but I very well could have. I don't have a video of that, but it's just very similar. You would, you know, just like a C curve, you would get your dog to go over to a 90-degree turn, have their back toward the dog, and maybe feed for good behavior, distract with find it just at your feet. You wouldn't even have to have the dog in a sit if you didn't want to, if the dog didn't feel like doing that, or, you know, it's not necessary. But it's one move I don't have a video of, so. But it's very similar. Yeah, I think you can probably picture that. All right. So up until now, those techniques we've talked about, getting distance, repositioning, using find it, using a food lure as a distraction, we've kind of been, you know, getting our dogs maybe focused not on the other dogs. Maybe we're keeping food at their nose just to keep them from staring at the dog. Maybe we are just simply distracting with food. And that's fine. You could probably just do that forever if you wanted. But there is a time at which your dog is going to see dogs out there, even from a distance. And there are some techniques that you can use to help that, to help build focus, to help build predictability, and to reward your dog for when they actually are looking. You can reward your dog for looking at the other dogs, and that's a super useful skill, like super useful tool. So there's a technique that goes by either the Look at That game, which was developed by Leslie McDevitt in part of her Control and Leash program. She's a really famous trainer with a whole set of programs and certifications in that. Super, super useful skills in that program. That technique the similar technique is also sometimes called Engage-disengage. I don't know who came up with that term, but anyway, you might hear it both ways. The gist of it is you reward your dog when they see the dog, but before they whine, bark, or pull. So the idea is you give a treat, or if you're doing clicker training or marker training, you can click or mark the moment the dog looks, but before they bark, pull, whine, or do the behaviors we don't want. You do this from a distance if needed, maybe a great distance if you need it first. And it's really from whatever distance your dog can calmly look. So it's a bit of a timing game. You do have to kind of pay attention to that at first. The idea is that after repetition, and this could be a repetition of days, could be a repetition of longer, but after rewarding a dog for looking, they see the dog, they get rewarded. They see the dog, they get rewarded. Enough times, what will happen is they will start to see the dog, anticipate that they're going to get rewarded, and start to reorient toward you in anticipation of the treat. And enough times of that, you'll see the dog look at the dog, look back at you, look at the dog, look back at you. That means the environment, the sight of the dog, has almost become the cue, the information to your dog of what to do to reorient back toward you. Okay. All right. So This is a video this is not on YouTube and not my video. You can go look it up. I couldn't, it's hard to get a video of engage, disengage, or reward your dog for looking, because the timing is really important. And when I'm doing this in my classes, I'm teaching, it's hard to get the video of the teaching moments. But I'm going to play this video. I'm going to pop ahead to it, though. You can look at the whole video later. I'm going to pop ahead to a mark at which she's really showing this technique. She's marking, she's saying the word yes or yep, and giving the dog a treat when the dog sees the other dog. This dog has experience with this already. He looks at her several times, even in her explanation. He's looking at the dog, looks back at his person. Don't worry if you don't quite grasp this right away right now. Again, you can go look at the video again, but let me just start the video, pop it ahead, and to the point.
Steve, what you do at home called Engage, get you at this. It might be.
Bear with me.
You have to tell them. And then when he's engaged, so we're just going to go a little bit closer. I want him to look at the dogs, not at me.
He already looked back at her.
You might have to point to them.
I would have rewarded that.
Yes. And then I give him his treat. So he engaged. Yes. And then I rewarded him. Yes. Good job. Now the second part is the disengage. So Moose knows engage, and when he looks at the dog, I'm going to see if he's going to disengage to me. And then that means this is working. He's getting it. Yeah, look at the doggies. Yes. So he disengaged on his own, and that's again because I've been practicing. You want to do this really short, 5 minutes a day, and keep your distance. If he starts to bark or if he starts to lunge, you're just too close. Yes, good boy. And when he's engaging, you want to give him about 5 seconds. Yes.
I would give about 3 seconds personally, but that's just trainer's choice.
Yes. And he did the engage, disengage all in 5 seconds. So he's been learning really good. So you can do this at home, high value treats, about 5 minutes, and then change your.
You see that at the end, he sees the dogs running and he looks back at her automatically. Let's play that again.
5 seconds. So he's been learning really good. So you can do this at home, high value treats, about 5 minutes, and then change.
You can almost see that dog saying, like, where's my treat, lady? Stop talking. Super powerful technique. I've used this for things other than dogs as well, but really, really useful tool. Even if your dog's not struggling to pass other dogs, it can help you get closer. Let's say you have struggled just with really close distances. This is really another technique you can use. So here's some more video on that. This is a class at Your Dog's Friend. I'm gonna point out 2 things before I start this video. The brown doodle who's in the foreground is a little more, I didn't want to say the word advanced, but has already gotten to the point where that dog can look at the other dog and look back at their person pretty readily. The German Shepherd in the for a little further away is doing a little bit of that, but is also their handler, their person is still clicking them for looking. Dog's still working toward getting rewarded for looking, and then just getting the treat from their person. So you kind of keep an eye on those 2 scenarios. They do another technique I'm going to talk about in a minute. You're going to hear people counting 1, 2, 3. You can ignore that for the moment. We're going to talk about it in a minute. But this is look at that in action. There's a lot of it happening here. These dogs have worked on it. This was not week 1. I don't even think it was week 2, but you can see it happening. They're looking at the dog. They look back at their person. Take a look. Lots of good leash skills in here too, really loose leashes, people focus on their dogs. Oh, come on.
1, 2, 3.
You see they're walking parallel to each other on purpose. That's by design at this point.
Okay, the next time out, I want Walter and Gonzo to just stop, let them look at each other, do a few look at that's, and then continue. You can keep counting, or you can do a look at that. Stop there with Gonzo. If he ignores them, you can reward that too.
Right there.
Good. Nice. Good job. Good timing with the shepherd. Well done. Okay. Let's send Gonza back for a break.
Okay. Rewarded for looking. This is what we want. Sometimes we're going to see dogs. We want to reward them for what we want. Neither dog is pulling toward the other dog. Neither dog is whining, staring down the other dog, rewarding what we want, which is looking. Again, we started this from further apart. We did not start here. We started further. The orientation and position of the dogs at this point in their training was on purpose. You see here, they're in a nice perpendicular, in fact, and they were walking in parallel ways right now. So reward for looking, look at that game. Also disengage, disengage. Takes longer in practice to do than what I'm describing in these few minutes here, of course, but you can do some research on it, take some classes, super useful skill. Okay. Yeah. All right. In that video, another really useful, you heard some people counting 1, 2, 3. This is part of, or is the 1, 2, 3 pattern game. It is a part of a control and leash program. Again, Leslie McDevitt's. The idea behind pattern games are a couple of things, but one that they do is create a system of predictability. The dog knows what's going to happen. The 1, 2, 3 game is really good for some dogs who struggle with distractions around other dogs. The idea behind it is you teach your dog when they hear the number 3, they're going to get a treat from you. And you teach them that pretty methodically. Then you start to count 2, 3, give a treat on 3. And then you start to count 1, 2, 3, give a treat on 3. And you can count while your dog's in a distracting environment, always give them a treat on 3. What happens with this is over time, the dog hears 1, 2, and they start to anticipate the treat. They can start to orient to you and they know what's going to happen. So for dogs who are a little anxious, predictability is key. So this is pretty useful for that. It's something that's pretty easy to teach and you can pretty much use it everywhere. You don't really have to worry about timing of your dog looking at you or when do I turn away. You can just, pretty much start to count in environments that are difficult for your dog. With that said, of course, you want to do this when it's further away. You teach at a distance. You always teach when it's easy. Start at a distance from the distraction. In this case, we're talking about other dogs, and then you get it closer. Okay. I'm gonna again show you part of a video, not my video again. I stole this off YouTube, and I'm gonna pop ahead to part of it so you can just see her she's kind of reteaching it here, and you'll see it just in a little bit of action. And then I have another video of you heard it and saw it in the other video, and I have one in class from one of our classes. So I'm gonna start this and then pop ahead, so bear with me for just a second.
Hey everyone, it's decent distance from the majority of the distractions.
Okay.
And get him super used to it. I want to do it in different areas under different levels of distraction to start, starting with lowest distractions up to highest distractions. So we'll start again with charging it up with that last number, 3. Good. Since I'm in a new environment, we're just going to go back to basics real quick. 3. Then I'm going to build it in again. Gus. 2, 3. 2, 3. Good. And then back up to 1. 1, 2, 3. You can see there he's already picking up. When I hit the number 2, he's already starting to pay attention to me and kind of look up, expecting that treat to come. And it's really important that that treat does come every single time you say the number 3. Good boy. 1, 2, 3. Good. Now we're going to change up the game even more. You'll notice I've been in a primarily stationary position with him, but anytime you add something different, you're proofing that game even further. So now I'm just going to move around with Gus a bit. 1, 2, 3. Good. Come on, Gus. 1, 2, 3. And you'll notice it's hard to see with his big fluffy head, but as I get to 2, he starts looking up at me, ready for that treat. Good boy. 1, 2, 3. Good. 1, 2, 3. What a perfect moment for practice. I don't know if you could see, but we had a little cart roll by in the background. 1, 2, 3. And I'm still able to proof this and practice it even further in getting Gus's attention under distraction.
This is
Hey,
something,
everyone.
again, you would teach when it's easy, and then start to work in distractions. Here's a video from class, same class as before. It's not quite as a very long video, but this dog here is pretty much looking, as soon as this dog hears 1, they're looking up at their person. They've had a lot of practice of 1, 2, 3. It's worked really well for that dog and that person. So just take a look.
One, two, three.
And there was another one, the brown dog. I'll just play it again because of the dog in the foreground gets 1, 2, 3, and then the doodle in the middle gets 1, 2, 3 as well.
One, two, three.
Okay. And maybe it's obvious, but I'll say it anyway. It takes longer to build this than these few minutes that I'm describing. And again, these clips are after it's been taught a bit. So, but I did want to introduce you to that. You can do some research on that, build it at home, add in distractions gradually. It can be super useful. Okay. I'm going to show you a couple more videos. I'm almost done. I'm going a little longer than planned, but not too much longer. But before I show those videos, I just want to say something about practice, because I can't say this enough, and most trainers would agree that practice is key to any new skill you're introducing. And it's also key to start when there aren't distractions. Then start with non-dog distractions, like the video of me luring my dog away from the stuffed dog. You can practice with people or anything out there. And then you have to practice a lot, repetition, daily, every walk as part of your leash walk. And I like to say sometimes that it's like as a lifestyle choice after a while. This is part of your dog's, the way they are on walks. With repetition and practice, you can then pass with decreased distance. You can use the food as a distraction and as a redirect less often, and use it more for behaviors you teach. If you remember in the beginning, I said you can also teach your dog focus or leash skills or like a touch targeting behavior. And you can use, I'm all about rewarding with food, but instead of just using it to distract out from the outset, you can ask your dog to look, they look at you, they get their treat. But this takes a lot of repetition and practice with careful spacing, okay? So it's just key to every new skill. It won't happen overnight. It won't happen if you practice once a week. Okay, so I have a couple, two more videos with dogs who've got some training behind them, some practice, and we're just practicing some skills, getting closer. This is again after training or after they've been using some of the techniques along the way. Take a look.
Jenny, look. Over here, good girl.
Look at the positioning too here
Good girl.
of the dogs.
Jenny, look.
That's great. Can you do that again and just keep walking instead of stopping and sitting?
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
let me go over here. Let's go back. No. Jenny, come here. Movie star. Here. Jenny, look.
Nice look at that from the husky.
Look. Good girl.
I'm gonna just replay that for a minute. I know I'm running a little late on time, but I just want to pay attention to the treats the husky's getting for that good behavior. It's a lot. It's a fair number of treats. This is actually a little
Yes.
Jenny, look.
example of the
Over
that
here,
90-degree
good
in that
girl.
situation.
Let's go this way. Good girl.
Lots of rewards for what we want.
Good girl.
Treats.
That's great. Can you do that again and just keep walking instead of stopping and sitting?
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
move over here. Let's go back. No. Jamie, come here. You're gonna be a movie star.
More treats, not some good attention. That's gotten rewarded a lot over time, so the behavior continues. All right, one more video.
Look.
Come on. This is dogs getting closer over time. You'll see less reliance here on food lures and things like that, and dogs being rewarded for behaviors.
So see if you can get a little closer, Megan. And now. That was perfect.
Nice, look at that.
Ask her to look at
That's
you.
doodle.
Good. Ask her again. Or reward that. She offered her attention to you. Very nice, you all. I'm so happy.
Come on, we got a refill.
That was perfect. Give them a
Okay. So
break.
all that setup was also intentional. Distance is intentional. How they orient is intentional. So, okay. All right, I've been talking a lot. I'm almost done. Then we'll get to Q&A. There's some other helpful things that you can do, okay? These techniques, use one of them, two of them, all of them. You can interchange them. You don't have to use them all the time. You can kind of pick and choose what works well for you and your dog, different ones for different scenarios perhaps. But there's other things that can just help behind the scenes or when you're not on a walk, so to speak. Doing activities with your dog that aren't a walk, something you can do together kind of helps you work as a team that can help you can maintain a training relationship while you're out there on the walk, sniffing for treats, interactive games, training. And also make sure your dog has the activity and exercise they need that's not just a leash walk. Because if the seeing dogs on the walk is the only highlight of your dog's day, it might be the highlight, but if it's the only one on a regular basis, that is still going to remain the most exciting thing they're going to try for. So you want to throw in some other things they like to do, highlights of things they like, other things, digging, sniffing, agility things, off leash pay with appropriate dogs. But that's a whole nother webinar topic. I'm not even going to get into that. But for some dogs, that does help with their energy. One more screen on other resources, and then I'm going to wrap it up. I'm sorry, that little thing is sitting there. Sorry about that. Classes that you could take to help with these skills, basic skills classes. These are the first ones at Your Dog's Friend. Other places around will have classes too, but basic skills, there will be dogs in class. I teach a class, Passing Dogs on Leash, Skills for Success. Leash walking classes generally will work more on not pulling and polite manners on a leash, but you'll probably have dogs in the class that can help. Control and leash classes, which really focus on that program I mentioned earlier, pattern games, focus, predictability. If your dog's in the reactive kind of category or you're not sure, reactive dog classes also really helpful. And then there's a treasure trove of information on Your Dog's Friend YouTube channel. So other ways to get help, private training if you want one-on-one help. There's a trainer resource list at Your Dog's Friend. I offer private training in my area, but if I can't help you, I could refer you out. So there's lots of information out there. Okay. That's it. I'm done. That's my presentation. I do hope this was useful and you've picked up some tidbits of information. And at this point, I kick it back to Carrie.
All right, that was fantastic. I loved it. We have multiple questions in the chat. So the first one is, but what type of cheese do you recommend as a treat?
Whatever your dog likes and they can have. My go-to, I'll tell you my go-to, but is mozzarella cheese sticks that I can cut up into tiny little pieces. They're easy to keep in the fridge. They're easy to tuck into my training bag. They can serve as a snack for me if I get really hungry. Other dogs, cheddar cheese, something hard, something that's not going to just mush around in your hands. A lot of dogs like squeeze cheese, you know, or like spray cheese or whatever. That's a little more cumbersome, of course, but whatever your dog likes and can have and can tolerate, that would be my answer.
Excellent. Yeah. You know what I've seen people use is the cans of squeeze cheese in one of the holsters you can get to hold either a pop can or a Kong that you hook to your belt. And they'll keep that can of squeeze cheese in there, and it's really easy to grab. Yeah. I also like the mozzarella sticks that are individually wrapped so that they don't make a mess, which is nice. Yeah. All right. So Rosemary asked, when I'm walking my dog, I can usually reward him just for looking and there's no reaction. However, if the other dog starts barking, I can't seem to refocus him. Do you have suggestions?
So what I would do in that scenario, good observation, first of all, and I would preemptively get a little more space for a while. So if you think right now I'm making these numbers up, let's say and if the other dog doesn't bark, you can pass with 6 feet, making that up again. But let's say you're not sure if the other dog's gonna bark, then just preemptively get 3 more feet, 4 more feet away and see if distance doesn't help that. The other thing is just get a little more versed in sort of dog body language. Maybe you can start to focus on the other dog a little more and gauge if they're gonna bark or not. That's hard to do. There's a lot to do out there when you're walking your dog. I would start distance as your first thing to try and then go from there.
Excellent. So Laura asked, does Find It confuse them regarding scavenging? So what I think she's asking is, does it cause them to scavenge for other things on the ground more if you teach them Find It?
That's possible, but I haven't seen that a big problem in my experience, with the caveat that some dogs, if you have a really, really terrible scavenging problem, then maybe Find It's not your best tool. I know some people are really working on their dogs not picking up stuff from the street. Maybe they're going to be service dogs in training or some therapy dogs or something like that. Then maybe Find It's not the technique for you. Because usually it's coming from the person first, I haven't seen it worsen scavenging behavior. But if somebody had told me from the outset scavenging was a problem, I probably would just not be using Find It.
So Lisa says she has a 9-month-old puppy who will take the high value treat that she offers when another dog passes, but then the dog spits it out and won't eat it. And Find It doesn't work either.
Oh, okay. Right. Distance is your first thing to try. And then if something lickable, perhaps. That I didn't put that in the treat category, but some dogs have spray cheese would be one. We just talked about that. Some dogs, if you can give them something that they lick, then you don't have to worry about the spitting out. They've taken the treat. Soft food in you can buy soft treat, like soft mushy treats in a pouch. They sell them for dogs now. I forget their names right now. You can put soft mushy food in like a tube, those little squeeze tubes. You can buy pouches of baby food that your dog can work well. And then again, I would try being a little bit further away and try a different high value treat. Sometimes just switching it up can help. Maybe 1, 2, 3 game and go from there. I have occasionally seen, and I say this with trepidation, but I'm going to say it. I have occasionally seen dogs who, if they're super socially motivated with their person, a little bit of praise if they're doing what you want. So let's say they spit the treat out, but they're still looking calmly. Just good dog, good dog, good dog until that dog's passing. Now, if they're pulling, lunging forward, you know, I wouldn't do that. And I wouldn't want to stay there too long. Like you still want the dog to be able to like refocus or keep walking. Be careful with praise because it's not usually as rewarding as people think. So I say it with a little trepidation, but I have sometimes just had it being able to bridge that time where the dog's just so focused. And just, okay, as long as they're doing what you want, if they are just sitting and looking, Okay, good dog until the dog's.
Sandra, my dog will lie down and not budge when she sees a dog or a squirrel. How can I work on preventing this?
You know, I should have probably, and I thought about that, I should have probably put a whole category on for the lying down staring dogs, because we get those in class all the time, and it's more common than you think. Yes, it's hard. Keep them moving before they can lie down if you can. Really evaluating, I'm going to say distance and distance and distance 1,000 times. People would be like tired of that answer, but that's actually really part of it. And another thing I do tell people to try to practice is actually in your house, have your dog lying down and try to get them to get up and come with you away from you, like a U-turn or a 90-degree turn, or focus on you and move with you when they're lying down. So you would literally set your dog up to lie down, and you would be like, take your food, Fido, and see if you could get them to walk away with you. Practicing at home when there's no squirrel in front of them. So just even the idea of lying down, getting up, walking with my person is part of their behavioral repertoire. You could even, if you wanted, on the walk, no dog around, nothing's going on, sit down, practice it without a dog around. So again, it's part of the repertoire. The long-term goal is we keep them up and moving most of the time, but if it happens, see what you can do. If in the meantime, another thing that at least if the lying down is going to move the dog into a lunge pull toward, in the meantime, again, I'm going to try to keep the dog from lying down eventually, but if let's say they're there in the meantime, you could, to keep them from getting up and pulling, the lying down is better than that. So you could do a find it right in front of their face, you know, find it. As an interim measure. Yeah, that's what I try.
Is it a bad idea to pick up small dogs when other dogs are passing? We do this to increase distance on narrow trails, but wonder if it's emotionally not the best for them. It keeps them quiet and calm 99% of the time as other dogs pass, but it feels like a crutch or too simple of a shortcut.
Well, what's wrong with a crutch, honestly? Like, in some ways, we call it management. It's another way to get distance. Are you teaching your dog anything? No, but you are teaching them, you're keeping them safe. So you're not teaching them a behavior, but you are keeping them out of harm's way. So, you know, if it's working and your dog doesn't seem worse for the wear, sure, why not? But if you want to work on it, use it as the crutch in the meantime, and use these other techniques when you have the space or distance. I mean, small dogs can be vulnerable out there, especially if you've got a big dog coming at you. Yeah, it's, you know, if your dog hates being handled and picked up, then they're going to have a negative association with that scenario. So I'd be just thinking about if that's the case. I don't know if that's their situation or not, but yeah. Okay. That's the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I would mention too is some dogs will find being picked up and held more restraining, and so they'll react more.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
right.
I think it's individual.
That's true.
You said.
Yeah.
Do you confuse a dog if you are using engage-disengage with the clicker and then start teaching the 1, 2, 3 pattern?
I've not seen dogs get confused by that. I've seen them respond to both. You saw that in one of the videos. Dogs are fairly forgiving of our mistake if we make a mistake. And you see in that, if you remember that video, they were using 1, 2, 3 and the look at that like together, right? Sometimes. Be clear which one you're doing, maybe. And I think, you know, it wouldn't be confusing. Yeah, I think it would be okay. If you think, but the other way to look at it is if you're trying these techniques and your dog is not responding the way you think, and you try just taking one of those techniques out for a while and do one, and then see if you start getting a response and then do the other, and sort of do your own little sort of research on it with your dog, you know.
Good idea. So Carol has a question that is not going to be answerable, but I think you can give her some good pointers. My recently adopted 9-year-old Papillon is convinced that other dogs are Martians and ready to eat him and me at our manners class. We are working on this. I'm doing a lot of what has been discussed and thinking of adding a head collar, previously using a halter. Thoughts? So things that we've added in the chat is the dog was adopted a month ago, and he is protective of Carol. Her husband can sit and cuddle him, yet if the hubby comes into the office, my pup will go on a barking frenzy. I'm using eyes to help him understand his alert message is no longer needed. So yeah, what can you give Carol to just as some pointers to get her started?
I think there's a lot more going on there. Resource guarding is its own great big category, so that's what I would start addressing as well. And that's just way out of scope for even, I don't even know how to begin with that, but definitely get some guidance on resource guarding from a good trainer or behaviorist. I would also say if you're in a manners class and the dog is still reacting in that environment, they may not be able to work in that environment yet. Some dogs do not do well in classes, in a training center. They really don't, and maybe private one-on-one training is needed. Your dog's still adjusting. A month is not that long. I do applaud you for getting training though. I applaud you for trying these things. I would say a head collar is not going to be the answer for such a small dog. And it's a piece of equipment that's just going to be a management tool, but not a training tool. Yeah, get some guidance, some private training guidance, address the resource guarding, and consider there's probably some low-level anxiety going on across the board for your dog. I don't want to get too diagnostic because I'm just not in that relationship with that person, but that's what it sounds like to me. Yeah, lowering overall anxiety might be a big thing to kind of look at. So
yeah, excellent. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on there. Let's see, Alana, I hope I got that right. Elena, is there ever a way to have your pup sit, have a treat, stop barking, and at some point be able to continue this while you pass the other dog, so you don't have to constantly be avoiding the other dog? It feels like there won't be a way to ever pass if we are constantly redirecting or walking away from the other dog.
Yes, you decrease your distance slowly over time. So with repetition, if your distance where your dog can sit and take a treat while the dog passes is 10 feet, maybe there's a time where it's 8 feet, and then maybe it's 6 feet. Or maybe it's 6 feet, but you have to change your dog's positioning. Or maybe it's 6 feet and you have to lure your dog past for a while. So anytime we're dealing with a dog who has an issue with any trigger, any environmental trigger, another dog, no matter, or whatever else it is, there's this sort of phrase of like decreasing distance over time. So, and that means repeated practice. I know what you're saying. I hear you, because even in my presentation, I'm saying, hey, use food as a distraction. But I don't want to do that forever either. It's not a substitute for training necessarily. You still want to train those focus cues, that leash walking behavior. So I would look at really getting those fine-tuned, focus on you, leash walking with you, and then decrease over time. And thinking of the difference of using food as a distraction, lure away, versus food as the reward. Fido, look, come this way. We walk away, then I get the treat. And that's training, that's skills training. Yeah.
Tatiana has a great question for every person who's ever had two dogs. I walk with two of my dogs together. If one dog starts barking, the second one starts too. What is the best way to keep them quietly to pass another dog?
Yes, you won't like my answer, but I'm going to answer it anyway. So, it is really hard to train two dogs at once. And so whoever's the barking initiator is the dog to focus on first, and train them separately on a leash walk. Even if you have to chop the walk in half and walk them one at a time, take two people, one person per dog, more distance again. There's not a good way to train two dogs at once. You can't really, you could kind of do find it, maybe two dogs at once, maybe. You can't really lure two dogs at once, but In that scenario, you're probably going to focus more on skills and then reward for the behavior versus using the food as a distraction, the lure. The 1, 2, 3 could work for 2 dogs, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 at the distance you want. If you ever notice one dog barks and the other doesn't, immediately reward that non-barking dog. It's also, but separate training sessions, I think, are going to be the key. Sorry.
Excellent. Yeah, that's not the answer we want, but.
No, it isn't.
All right, Barbara's question. My dog loves to play and run with other dogs, but he gets triggered by 2 particular dogs in the neighborhood and loses any focus on me, won't take a treat, etc. She has a standard poodle and the offender dogs are a husky and a golden doodle. I've tried turning, crossing the street, etc. But once he has seen the other dogs, he pulls, barks, etc. I don't know why he has picked these 2 dogs or how to get him to refocus on me.
Yeah. Further than you think and turning away sooner than you think. It is hard when they have like a nemesis dog. Again, it's not the answer you want. And I know I keep saying distance, but knowing if your dog goes over threshold, and once they're over threshold, meaning they've passed the point of can't focus, all that things that she just described. If you know that, you got to work even harder at preventing that from happening. And it's hard. It is challenging. And when we walk in an urban environment or suburban, maybe stuff is everywhere. We don't always have this great big field of distance that we want. You might want to look into more reactive dog training tips, which really focus more on like, we got to hide behind the car because we really can't have them barking and, you know, lunging and growling that way. Hiding, blocking their vision of the dogs, avoidance maybe for a while, and practicing a lot with the non-nemesis dogs. So I say this a lot when if I've got a client or a student who's got like a dog issue and we're walking down the street and we're doing a practice some technique and I see a person coming, I'm already thinking practice opportunity. Let's practice this skill with a person. No, and the client might say, but that they're fine with people. I'm like, I understand that, but let's practice them with an entity coming at them. So for this scenario, you might practice a lot of these skills more often than you think with the dog-friendly dogs or the neutral dogs. And only then are you going to be able to have a chance to get it with the nemesis dogs. And if you can avoid their walk schedule, avoid the walk schedule.
Yeah, all excellent tips. Okay, Wendy, I haven't done a lot of training yet, but when there is a distraction, I shorten the leash in my hand for more control. I thought I saw you do that in one of your videos. This seems to amp up my dog. How should I do this as I start training, or is it making it worse? I may have conditioned him to get amped up.
Yeah. I debated again about putting leash skills into this presentation. I did not because it's just so much information, but you did see me sort of get a shortened leash in one of those videos, and I'll take that as I should have explained that a little bit. So you can have a very short leash and keep it loose. We are mostly aiming, especially dogs who get tense, for a loose leash on a walk, okay? Slack in the leash. You'll sometimes hear some trainers say a J shape, slack, right? Tight, slack. If your dog pulls forward, of course, you know, you just kind of hold that. But as soon as I can, what I'm aiming for is slack. You can have a very short leash and slack. And a lot of times all you got to do is take your hand and lower it by an inch. You've already taken tension out of that leash. So I think I know which video she's talking about, and I really got really close up to my dog. He's strong. I had 2 little dogs coming at me. But if you look carefully, I am short but slack. So as best you can, short is fine. If you're trying to get like past a situation, shortened is fine, but try to think of slack. And to practice that again, you might just need to do that further away. I hope that answered that question.
I think that if I'm reading it as it was meant, I think that was a perfect answer. Christine, when you can't do a U-turn or get much distance and see the approaching dog for a while, for example, on a straightaway or a rail trail, what's the best way to lower arousal as they are approaching to decrease excitement for the moment that they are super close to each other?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat the first part of that?
Yep. When you're in a narrow space where you can't do a U-turn or get very much distance, and you have a dog coming at you that they can actually see from a long distance away, what's the best way to lower the arousal as your dog is watching that dog coming and coming and coming to help decrease your dog's arousal for the moment when the dog finally gets to you?
Right, okay, got it. All right, what I would do is break their eye contact in a number of ways. I wouldn't even just use the same way all the time. Walking along and I got nowhere to go there, nowhere to go there. Hey, let's lure for a moment. Let's lure 6 inches in this direction for a moment. Let's do a find it 3 inches in that direction. Let's do a find it right down at the ground. Let's do a quick U-turn and then continue on, so that you're breaking the stare a couple different times. You're giving them another option of something to do. You're asking them for a different behavior. I would also teach, again, we didn't teach this in this webinar today, I would teach a touch targeting behavior, because then you could be asking your dog as you're walking along, touch, touch, touch. And that means they bump your hand with their nose, they're following you. And it gives them something very specific to do, because they're looking at your hand, they're not looking at the other dog. Again, a little out of scope for today, but you could look up resources for that. And I would switch it up a little bit, lure, find it, another behavior. And sometimes you can just break that stare by going 6 inches that way. We almost always have 6 inches or 8 inches, right? We usually do. You could even take a quick moment. Okay, maybe we just need to come to the side for a second. Maybe I just need to change my dog's orientation for a minute. Look at me for a moment, break the stare. And then repeat, repeat. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's really challenging. So you have to get a little creative.
Okay, so we have a hound dog question. Courtney, I have a beagle who starts howling, not upon first seeing a dog, but upon actually smelling the dog, so distance smelling. How do I do the engage, disengage in that situation? Because by the time we actually get close enough to see the dog, she's already been howling for quite a while.
Yeah. I laugh a little bit because I had a hound. Previous dog was more houndy than the current dog. And I had this issue with cats. She would smell cats way before I knew they were around, and we would have this behavior happening. Engage, disengage, I wouldn't say would work for the howling. I think it's not going to work because that's really kind of a sight kind of idea. What I would do is practice on stopping the howling. So ideally, we don't want the dog to start howling in the first place, but okay, there we have it. It's there. Let's try to disengage from the howling behavior. So I'd work on some of the other techniques. Beagles and hounds are going to make a little bit of noise, so there's a little level of acceptance, but maybe we can get them making a little less noise, and then maybe a little less, a little less. And then this answers get so complicated because we could spend like a whole class on just this, right? But if you get really good at watching your dog's body language, you can sometimes start to see their signals that they're about to howl or make noise or vocalize. So if they're sniffing and the sniff, well, I'll use my dog, it's easier than my hand. They're sniffing and then they start to kind of like the sniffing gets a little more quivery, quicker. The step quickens up, the tail might start a little bit. If you could start to preemptively see those signs, you might be able to catch them before they vocalize. Yeah, that's my quick answer. I'm sure there's a longer answer. I know there is, but yeah.
Excellent. So Rosemary added a little bit to her questions. This is our last question. So if anybody has a last minute question, toss it in the chat now. She's the one who had the dog who was fine with dogs unless the other dog barks. And so what she added is I should have added that when walking at a distance and another dog runs and barks, my dog starts lunging and barking and I can't refocus him. So I don't want to reward him for that. So what does she do?
Yeah. So you might, there's this another sort of concept of like, for a while when we're improving behavior, because that's a little bit reactive behavior, right? But for a while, sometimes you are, you're rewarding a better version of what was happening before. So for example, there might be times where you have to start with dog lunges, Fido, this look or whatever, and they look and you reward it. So you have rewarded a bark, lunge, and look. You sort of, it started with that unwanted behavior, it ended with a look. And for a while, sometimes, if that's better than you had before, good, you go for it, you reward it. Okay. You're right, you still are sort of rewarding that bark look, you know, bark and then look, right? So over time, you want to just be ahead of it, preemptively think, can I get their behavior? Can I get the behavior I want before that lunge? And let's say for a while, maybe they lunge and they only do a little woof and look at you. I'd reward that. It's better than it used to be. And then over time, you can kind of gradually reward the behavior you want. There are some situations too, especially again with reactive dogs and sometimes even with just friendly dogs. If nothing's working and you're just like, you just got to get out of there or get through the situation, it is okay sometimes to just like, hang on, move as you can, get out of there and wait for the storm to pass. Ask your dog for some other little behavior that's good and reward that. There are times where it's not ideal training, of course, but we live not in a laboratory. We live in the real world, and dogs are sentient beings and they're going to have good days, bad days, and we are too. So sometimes the timing and the distance isn't going to be there. Sometimes it's not going to be ideal, and we do the best we can in the environment and then try to think ahead next time. What preemptively could I have tried earlier? Yeah, I'm going to go with that answer.
All right, that was the last of their questions. I have two that I think my clients would ask if I were giving this webinar specifically to my dog training clients.
Sure.
The first one is, I have a super dog friendly dog who never's gotten a fight, never barks at any other dogs. So can you explain why I need to teach my dog these skills when it's the other dog who has a problem? So does that make sense?
Yes. Because not all dogs want to greet. They don't. And it sets an expectation. Every time I see a dog, I greet. And that, I think, is an unrealistic expectation. There are times when you will not maybe want to stop and say hi either. You got a meeting, someone's coming home, it's raining, you're tired, whatever. You want to keep moving. Your dog might not be super dog friendly forever. So we all like to think they will, but maybe they won't. So let's have these skills underneath, ready at, as you go. The most important one I would say is not all dogs want to greet. And I think it's just politeness to have your dog not pulling, lunging, staring down toward other dogs. That's what I'd say. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And then my other one is, you mentioned a couple of times we're giving a lot of treats. So do you have suggestions for people who are working with this kind of training with a dog who maybe has weight concerns, has a medical condition, so they can't take like cheese or something and they can only have their own special diet? You're trying to give a lot of treats. What would you suggest people choose for those cases?
Right. Well, you have to keep your dog medically safe and healthy. So that's priority. So if you're worried about weight, go on some sort. I'm not going to give you really weight loss tips, so it's not my purview, but use their total calories in a day should not change too much if you're adding more food into your training. Maybe you can skim off some kibble. You can cut treats into small bits. I do this all the time for people. I show them. I don't know if this has come through on the video, but this is the size of one of those tricky trainer treats. It's about the size of maybe baby fingernail. And I cut this in half all the time. So really tiny, small pieces. And if your dog can only have like certain types of food, like their kibble or prescription diet, then that's all you can work with. We can't make them sick. You can take tiny bits of cheese on the walk and save it for, save that for the hardest situations. You can maybe mix in low value food or kibble with smelly stuff, so it takes a little bit of the taste on. Lickable stuff also sometimes you can get out in a smaller calorie amount per treat time. And you do the best you can, you work with what you can. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So another one, when you talk about lickable, a lot of people that are feeding hard kibble, there's a canned version of that food usually.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if they are on a dietary type of food, like science diet or something, there is a canned version, so you can load that into something squeezable. But yeah, those are all typical recommendations. Because that's a really common question I get is I can't be feeding this many treats constantly.
Yeah.
And then one last question from Joanne. My dog does the barking and lunging. She won't budge and is not motivated by food. So I just hang on to her until she does that behavior. And did I understand you to say it is okay to do that, or should I just not walk her? Which is an excellent question.
Yeah. I feel like this is one of these, I don't have enough information to answer this.
Yeah.
So, if the dog is, friendly, should another dog get close, meaning not going to cause a problem, not going to be aggressive, not going to get anxious, not going to cause anxiety to the other dog, I would get some training help and enroll in a class and keep walking your dog. If your dog you think is tipped into reactive territory, or you can't physically hang on, or you think there's aggression or anxiety going on, or going to cause anxiety in the environment or to the other dog or to themselves even, you could limit their walks to quieter times of the day, maybe reduce their walks, and add in other activity and enrichment to their total days in activity doesn't diminish that much. And if they will not take food, well, that's a whole other category of time. Usually there is a situation in which they will, and if the dog if there's no distance that for which they will take food from you, switch up your high value food. People have taken like hamburger and steak. You can really try that, which is opposite of your treat question actually, Carrie, but you could try that. If you've not tried super high value stuff and there's no distance that works, I'd get some training help somehow privately, just kind of to see if there's something more going on. Yeah, that's like a loaded question. There's a lot of variables that could go, but that's my sort of quick answer.
Yeah, excellent. So I did add in into the chat a Your Dog's Friend webinar link on YouTube that is called Walking Your Reactive Dog. So those of you who do have dogs that are more on the reactive side, that may be a really good first start. And definitely looking for a trainer who is working especially with reactive dogs is an excellent way to go. That is our last question. This was fantastic, Joyce. Thank you so very much for presenting.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Helpful. There were excellent questions.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.